Now, Gareth Southgate insisted he was pleased with England's performance as they fell to their first defeat at Wembley in 21 games, a 1-0 loss to Brazil. It's the first time in more than a year that England have failed to score, but there's also new injury concerns. But there was a new star on show at Wembley as Endrick became the youngest player to score a senior goal at the stadium.
I was pleased. Clearly don't like losing football matches, but I thought there were lots of very good individual performances from players who've hardly played for England. I think you're dealing with exceptional quality, so there were a couple of moments. Vinicius just got inside Kyle on the one that he got injured on. There were a couple of great quality passes, 1-2s. Played in behind, but you're talking about players in that attacking third at the very highest level of the game, and you are going to have moments where your goalkeeper has to make a save, or your defenders have to pull off an outstanding block or whatever it might be. So, I thought we also had those moments at the other end, and I thought it was a really even game. If it had finished a draw, I think that would have been a completely fair result.
Those are the thoughts of Gareth Southgate. Let's get the thoughts of Rob Dorset in wonderful spring sunshine at Wembley. Very good morning to you, Rob. Gareth Southgate was saying there he was pleased with England's performance despite the defeat. Should he be?
No, I don't think he should, is the blunt answer to that, Rob, and that's pretty blunt. But look, the England manager has to put a bit of a gloss on what was a very poor performance by England yesterday, for my money, and a very disappointing performance, I think you have to say. There were a couple of plus points. Anthony Gordon made his senior debut. I thought he was outstanding, both going forward and tracking back to try and win the ball back at times. He slotted in and looked absolutely to the manner born in that England shirt. And Kobbie Mainoo and Ezra Konsa also got debuts, and they both did OK. I mean, Kobbie Mainoo, as an 18-year-old, had a bit of a cameo at one stage and looked really, really comfortable in that environment, which I think was very pleasing for him and for England. But beyond those few positives, it was very poor. England were very poor. They didn't have a tempo, they didn't have a rhythm. That was easily disrupted by a very physical Brazil side who targeted Jude Bellingham, seemed to try and foul or disrupt England every time they had the ball. And it was just very, very poor. The concerns we've been talking about for several years now are still there for all to see. England were very poor defensively. Gareth Southgate didn't mention the goal there, which was a straight ball over the top. Jordan Pickford did what Jordan Pickford does, made a really good save, and Endrick scored on the rebound. But there were two other occasions where, but for an excellent save from Pickford or the width of a post, Brazil would have scored again. England could have lost that 3-0 last night, conceivably, you have to say. And the real concerning point for me is that there are an awful lot of injuries. Yes, there were 12 injuries going into the game and more that were unavailable to Gareth Southgate. The worst injury crisis he's had since he's been England manager. But 8 of those starting 11, I think Gareth Southgate would consider part of his strongest 11 they could ever put out if everybody was available. Jordan Pickford in goal, Kyle Walker at right back, Harry Maguire and John Stones in the middle, Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham as 2 of the 3 midfielders. Phil Foden was there as well. Of course, Harry Kane, the captain, the talisman, the man who leads the line and leads by example, is a huge loss. But 8 of those 11 you would expect, if they're fit, and if everybody's fit, to be in England's starting 11 for the first game at the Euros in the summer, and indeed as far as they go when they're playing the better teams in the later stages if they get there. So that'll be the concern. Mitigation, yes, but real worries for the England manager, I think.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is people saying England got strength and depth here, but are you saying that's not really the case, Rob?
I think that'll be his concern. I think that's always been Gareth Southgate's concern. He'll never say that publicly, of course. But I don't think England do have the depth further down in the squad that he would like. And some of his critics would say that's because Gareth Southgate has always played the same sort of players in big games. So perhaps he hasn't given enough opportunities to give some players experience on the international stage, which maybe would improve the depth of that England squad. But he's got some injury problems now, hasn't he? Jude Bellingham came off with cramp and is still clearly not 100% match fit after recovering from that injury with Real Madrid. Will he be able to go again in just 3 days' time. Jordan Henderson wasn't available last night. I spoke to him as he came through the mix zone. He looked fine. I asked him if he was okay, and he said he's trying. So hopefully that is better news for Jordan Henderson potentially being available to face Belgium on Tuesday night here. But if Henderson and Bellingham aren't 100%, could that mean Kobbie Mainoo gets even more game time? Not necessarily as part of Gareth Southgate's plan, but just out of needs must, I think. And defence, Kyle Walker came off with a hamstring problem. Again, I saw him in the mix zone, seemed to be walking around absolutely fine, but was he taken off as a precaution? Can he go again in 3 days' time? Will Manchester City and Pep Guardiola be happy with him going again in 3 games' time if he's got a bit of a tight hamstring when they've got that huge potential title decider, Arsenal against Manchester City, next weekend? That'll have to come into Gareth Southgate's thinking. Ben Chilwell, great to see him back in an England shirt, but it's a shame to say he had an absolute nightmare. So does that mean Joe Gomez comes in for him against Belgium on Tuesday? Harry Kane, you lose him and you lose an awful lot of England's impetus, don't you? 37 goals in all competitions this season, 12 assists on top. England's all-time leading record goal scorer with 62 goals. Cole Palmer hasn't trained. We saw him yesterday look fine. Is he available to go on Tuesday? All of these issues, I think, are a concern. It'll be interesting to see whether Gareth Southgate decides he's got to maybe call some more cover-up. He's name-checked a few players in England's under-21s. They have a Euros qualifier against Luxembourg at home on Tuesday. I just wonder whether Levi Colwill, because of the potential injuries at the back, may get the nod to join the senior squad. We'll see what develops over the coming hours and the next 24 hours about whether he has to make that decision.
Rob, wonderful to speak to you as always. Thank you very much indeed.